with a 64 present. A Playguide and video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome to another Lemon 64 game guide and review. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at a racing game, the unknown classic Night Racer, developed by Mastertronic in 1988. So, as the tape loads, yes, tapes do take time to load on a Commodore 64, but due to Mastertronic's dedication to the player, they have thoughtfully included a bonus game to play while the game loads. This comes in the shape of Mastertronic's customary invader load system, developed and coded by Richard Aplin. You may also remember the music there, and that's by Rob Hubbard. So while the game loads there, let's see if we can crack Space Invaders. In this game, we can shoot down the aliens' firepower if we align that on target, but with most points it's an avoid 'em up, to avoid the aliens' firepower and to blow them out of the sky. So let's carry on with doing that. Unfortunately, if the player gets a good score in the invader load, then they run the risk of the game loading, which will instantly clear invader load and wipe their scores. It's also most annoying when we get down to the last invader load character there, or a new wave, and the game loads and everything clears. So let's see how far we can get. Use that cover there, down to our last life, and let's see if we can take one of those out. Yes, there we go. And the last one, well, that's unfortunate, and look at that, the game crashes, and that can only mean one thing. As far as title screens go, the title screen of Night Racer is probably the most boring I've ever seen. Well, we do have the music, and we do have a title. It's section, and not Night Racer, but we do have a title, and all we can do is enter our name. The name entry can be a number of characters, and at least we can type that in on the keyboard. Having pressed enter, we gain a green light, and now we can press the fire button to enter the first level. So there's no more loading to be done, it's all loaded, so let's jump in and check this game out. To begin, we must remember to hold down the fire button to gain acceleration, and by pushing forward on the joystick or the controller, that will up a gear. We have 4 gears in this game, as seen in the very centre bottom of the screen. You can see the 4 on the gear lever there. Once in top gear, it's important to maintain that by maintaining the speed along these very difficult courses, and we must avoid all the traffic at all costs. If we can, then we find another racer, and it turns into Test Drive 2 the duel, because we have to take that guy on and beat him to the end of the race. If we do, then that's fine, and if we don't, well, there is a bomb planted in our vehicle, and if the bomb timer reaches 0, which is the red timer in the corner there, well, our car will blow up, and that's the end of the race and end of our life. But luckily, we have managed to beat the car into first position there, and the bomb is not triggered, and we even gain a fast time. The new record will go on to a fast time table, and by pressing fire we can see our progress. Pressing fire again will then take us on to the next section. There are 4 sections in this game, and the first 3 you can see in the map on the bottom corner, and that will give us a rough idea of the bends and the corners coming up. And sometimes it's important to take a look at that, because weaving in amongst this traffic isn't easy at the best of times. You can see me scraping the side there, and that will not harm our tyres. No, this is not pit stop 2. Scraping the side will not make the car blow up. Neither can we blow our engine, so at least that's good. On the downside, we really don't need to gear down and make use of gears. All we need to do is to maintain the high speed by not touching anything, and then we can catch up to that guy and overtake that guy and hopefully get to the line before the opponent. You can see on the graphics front everything is very smooth, running at 50 frames per second. And so this, just like Supercycle, is a very smooth racer on the Commodore 64. The controls are very responsive, and we can even try to change direction mid-corner, but when those corners are trying to fling us off, then we just have to drag that thing around the corners and hope for the best. So that's a new record time for us, and that's great because that means we get more score, more bonus. So again, that's amazing to see those options and that great music. At least we do get all those stats in between the levels. Heading on, this is level 3. Unfortunately, there is no way to take that opponent from the line, no matter how much we rev that engine. There is no turbo boost in this game, and as far as I know, there is no way to take that opponent unless you basically avoid the traffic for a number of vehicles. Maybe 6 vehicles there. Oh, look at that. Car is backing me into the wall there. That's certainly possible. And so strafing the edge will not harm us. It will abuse our top speed a little, but that's better than crashing into the back of one of those drivers, and that will slow us down a lot. Even touching the side of those drivers will slow us down, and so you must make 100% pass. And sometimes the road can just change mid-pass, and that flings us into that opponent and loses our speed. Even when that happens, do not gear down, always maintain 4th, because if we gear down into 3rd, that will lose a significant amount of speed indeed. Perhaps the hardest part is when we find the opponent, and trying to squeeze past there on those corners isn't particularly easy, and again you have to make 100% pass, because if you just don't, then you can't. And if he gets to the line, the yellow driver, then the bomb is triggered and we only have a certain time limit to get to the line before we blow up, and that time is actually carried forward onto the next level. So if we use most of our time, well, look at that again. If we use most of our time with these maneuvers, having not found that driver, then that will continue on to the next level. We've now used 20% of our cushion there. So that's 140. It's very difficult to get the best time on the 3rd section unless you don't hit anything. And I think these high scores are from the disc load version, which I'm actually using at the moment, which are generic high scores by the disc makers of this game. Carrying on there, we have reached level 4. Now, level 4 is a very long rally indeed. You can see the AI of the opponents aren't very intelligent. They will virtually stay in their lane, and just like Pit Stop 2, the mechanics are very similar. You'll have to avoid those, but unlike Pit Stop 2, most of these drivers appear in the centre of the screen, and you'll have to veer left and right to avoid those. If you choose the correct lane, great. If you don't, you are off. And sometimes you have to make those decisions, and weaving left to right certainly helps, because that's usually the best way to get around those guys. And you can see my tactics are improving. There is a very long straight in the middle of this level here, so overtaking cars isn't so bad. Unfortunately, there is no logs to jump over, there's no water, and there's no pickups, and there's no basically anything to entertain the driver except this succession of corners. So unfortunately the game could have had better options involved. And as a straight rally game, well, all you can say it is very fast and it is very smooth. But the reason I recommend this game above other games in the rallying on the 64 ilk, well, if you've tried 4x4 off-road racer, you'll find a very appalling game, and most racers on the 64 are actually very appalling considering the 64's capability. And this game is really very smooth, and the handling and the controls are very smooth, and actually the playability and the addictability factor are very strong. Because this game can be completed end to end within 10 minutes, then that means the player can just dive in for a quick 10-minute rally and get those high scores. The coder of Night Racer was Kevin T. Green, who also created the almost unpronounceable Non-Terrakius in 1985 and Space Hunter in 1985 for Mastertronic, and he was the main coder behind the unbelievably disappointing Flash Gordon by Mastertronic in 1986, and his last game was International Speedway after this in 1988, released on the Silverberry label. And the music was created by David Dunn, whose other credits include Chiller, David Braben's Elite, Finders Keepers, and even Tornado Low Level by Ocean. So the music is, I wouldn't say well done, but it's okay, and the graphics aren't amazing, but they are certainly okay. And there you go, that's the actual game completed in a time of 6 minutes 12. So that's the game end to end. You saw there the ticking time bomb, I only just made it, and if you let the computer beat you on the last level, then it's very hard to catch up, and I'd say almost impossible unless you beat almost every single other driver in the field. Night Racer is a quick game in every sense, and 6 minutes to complete the game is amazing. You can see an example of my high scores there, 67,000. But because this game is so fast, it's possible to complete the game and to play it again directly after and not get bored. So let's do that. And sometimes this game plays fairly and sometimes it doesn't, but of course if we choose the wrong lane to begin, then sometimes those passing maneuvers are going to fail before we've even started. The faster we go, the more bonus we'll get at the end of the track, and the more time and squeezing past the opponent there, that gives us all the room we need to race to the line. There is no flags on the line except for the one on the road, and there are no roadside chevrons or even tunnels to drive through in this game, but again the playability is there in spades. It's jumping action. Sometimes just diving on in there for a quick race is more fun than pits up 2, and more forgiving than pole position. Let's move on again to the second track, and it's a shame there are only 4 tracks, but there are at least 4. It wouldn't be great if there was only 1 track. I like the map in the corner, which works, and all those dials, which I've no idea what they do on the dash there. They seem to work, and the dials of course under the wheel for the revs is always a nice touch, and so this is faster and smoother than Test Drive 2 and many games on the Commodore 64. Maybe it's not as fun as Outrun by a long stretch, and we'll certainly be seeing Outrun later on, but you can get some fun out of this game. Unfortunately, the magazine reviewers weren't so enthusiastic. Zap only gave this 36% in September 1988. Commodore User gave Night Racer 60% in July 1988, saying that this was a rip-off of Supercycle. And Commodore Computing International, Tony Horgan, gave this again 60%. Well, unfortunately, that is the case, and the frame rates are silky smooth and the action is packed. You can see the bomb timer is moving there. Let's get to that flag, and well, we've only got a quarter of our time remaining before that bomb blows up, and that's carried forward. And so sometimes if you don't have that and you're not a great driver, then that makes difficult progress ahead. So let's see if we can make that a reality going on to the 3rd level. And pushing forward there to gear up is a little strange, but it's not too bad once you get used to that fact. Pulling back to brake may be a disaster, but luckily we do not have to do that, even if we crash. And there are no major crashes in this game, just bumps like this, and even if we scrape our tyres they won't explode. So there are mercies in this game. At least it's not like pole position where the car blows up every 2 seconds. And so the player can continue there and have fun. Unfortunately, because that bomb timer is an extra element in this level, if you do make those mistakes, the game can be fairly punishing. But let's not forget, this was a Mastertronic game. It was probably released for $2.99 or somewhere in the region, i.e. it's a budget title, and for the budget price, I think gaining a 4-stage rally and often fast and furious action isn't too bad at all. There are certainly lots of worse playable games on the 64, and maybe we'll cover some of those driving games in the future. Meanwhile, on the Commodore 64, you can see I bumped a number of times there, and that means I'm slow over the third stage. This is make or break. Let's just hope and pray that no traffic materializes there, and the bend doesn't take us off. Well, so far so good. If I can get through there, that's no problem. But look at that, a few bumps later and a squeeze into a corner means he gets through, and I have to basically, look at that, straight on the line, and I blow up. Well, I said there was no blow-ups in this game, but we blow up if we don't make that line, and that's a good incentive to play the game. It's certainly better than a checkpoint system like Outrun. So back to the title screen there, we find nothing. Thank you for viewing another play guide and review to this hidden gem by Mastertronic Night Racer.